Hey everybody, Eternal Fire here. I'm bringing you a video on the Prot Warrior class guide to the pre-patch to the Legion expansion 7.0.3. Today we're going to be talking about the talent trees that have changed. We're going to be talking about the spell book. We're also going to be going over the two different rotations that I see, as a plausible spec for your Prot Warrior. So with that, we're going to go right into the talents. You have Shockwave, Stormbolt, and Warbringer in your first tree. I think Shockwave is the best because you can choose when to use it. The cooldown is reduced if you strike at least 3 targets by 20 seconds. It's going to stun the enemies for 4 seconds. It's going to be your best option in this tier because it gives you the most utility and stuns, the max amount of people in front of you. You have the most control of when you use it. Stormbolt's really going to be something more if you find some sort of PvP spec for your Prot Warrior. Warbringer is just really weak in comparison to the other two because you just charge in. It does a root for 1.5 seconds, and it roots all enemies around your main target too. So you really just have a lack of control. Impending Victory gives you a 15% maximum heal every 30 seconds, and it resets if you kill the target. Inspiring Presence I really like. You inspire your allies within 60 yards, causing them to be healed for 3% of all damage they deal. So this is going to be something really good in, high-end raid content or, Mythic Plus dungeons when you're taking constant raid damage the whole time. It's really going to help buffer that, that damage you're taking as a raid. Safeguard is the same thing. You intercept a friendly target, now causing 20% of the damage to be transferred to you for 6 seconds. Renewed Fury. Ignore Pain also enrages you, increasing all damage you deal by 10% for 6 seconds. I like this ability because you basically are going to have a 10% damage buff all the time because the two things you're going to be spending your rage on are really going to be, Shield Block and Ignore Pain. Ignore Pain is basically now your shield barrier of this expansion. So then we move over to Ultimatum. Your Shield Slam critical strikes cause your next focus rage to cost no rage. This is part of your DPS, your high damage spec. Avatar is no different than it was before. 20% damage increase for 20 seconds. Warlord's Challenge. When you use Berserker Rage, it makes your taunt have no cooldown, so you can taunt as many targets as you need to. This is going to be really situational. I mean, you're not going to want to have this up for most encounters, just if you're in a fight where you have to be taunting, many adds all at once. Bounding Stride is the glyph that we used to have. It reduces the cooldown by Heroic Leap by 15 seconds, and it gives you a speed boost by 70% by 3 seconds after you leap. Crackling Thunder is definitely the best choice here in this tier. It increases the radius of your thunderclap by 100%, and it generates threat to you. So you're going to want to be using that. You're going to be able to use that ability in every situation. So that's definitely going to be the one, the one you use. Best Served Cold. Revenge generates 2 additional rage for each target that it hits. I can't really see myself using that too much, especially with the other two abilities we're about to look at in this tier, Never Surrender and Indomitable. Never Surrender, Ignore Pain will ignore pain up to 100% more damage based on your missing health. So this is going to be a really good ability if you're, going into a boss fight or an encounter where your health is going to be below like 75%. Most of the time, it's going to really maximize on Ignore Pain for you. Indomitable increases your maximum health by 25% and the maximum effect of Ignore Pain by 25%. So that's going to be something you're going to want to use when you're not going to constantly be low health, because if you're going to be constantly low health, you're going to just benefit more from Ignore Pain on Never Surrender. We go over to Vengeance. And Ignore Pain reduces the rage cost of your next Focus Rage by 50% and vice versa. Focus Rage reduces the rage cost of your next Ignore Pain by 50%. So that's part of your DPS spec. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Into the Fray is my preferred choice. You gain 3% haste for each enemy within 10 yards up to 5 enemies. So, basically you have that up. You have a couple targets or even just one. The cooldown on your shield block, the cooldown on your shield slam are going to be a little bit shorter. And, that's just really, those are the abilities you want to be using them. You want to be using, so you want them up as much as possible. Booming Voice is probably the weakest ability in this tier. Demoralizing Shout also generates 50 rage and increases the damage you deal to the affected targets by 20%. Demoralizing Shout only lasts for 8 seconds and it's 1.5 minute cooldown, so definitely your weakest choice of this tier. Anger Management, every rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on Battlecry, Last Stand, and Shield Wall by 1 second. Heavy Repercussions extends the duration of Shield Block. Shield Slam extends the duration of Shield Block by 1.5 seconds, and Block increases the damage of Shield Slam by an additional 30%. One interesting thing they built into the game is that Shield Block by itself, passively, when you have Shield Block up, it increases the damage of Shield Slam, by 30%. So if you have Heavy Repercussions talent chosen, it's going to increase that buff to your Shield Slam by 60%. So that's quite a buff. Ravager, I like this for you, the utility. You throw it down, you have a AoE damage. It increases your parry by 30% for 12 seconds. So as far as survivability goes, I think that's the best option personally. You might use anger management if you know the time of when you're going to need things in a particular fight. You can reduce the cooldown of your Shield Wall and Last Stand. But Battlecry, I don't really think is that big of a thing for a Prot warrior that you're going to be too worried about that. Let's go to the spell book. Battlecry, let loose a Battlecry granting 100% increased critical strike for 5 seconds. So, that's your one DPS cooldown. You have Heroic Throw, you just throw your weapon, generates high threat. Berserker Rage, it will just break you out of some of the fear, sap, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds. Your Ignore Pain is a new ability. Again, it's your shield barrier of Legion. Fight through the pain, ignoring 90% of the next up to X amount of damage you take from any sources based on rage spent. So you can use 20 to 60 rage. Obviously 60 rage giving you your strongest Ignore Pain. Demoralizing Shout reduces damage you take by 20% for 8 seconds. It's kind of an emergency, survivability cooldown. Intercept can now be used on an enemy or an ally, and if you use it on an enemy, it roots them in place for 1.5 seconds. That is what we have as Charge now. Charge is no longer a spell for Prot warriors, so you're going to be using Intercept. Devastate is your filler ability. When you don't have Shield Slam or Revenge available, you're going to be using Devastate, and it also has a 30% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Shield Slam. So whenever you don't have Shield Slam or Revenge ability up, you're going to be using Devastate. Last Stand just increases your maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds. Focused Rage. Focus your rage on your next Shield Slam, increasing its damage by 50%, stacking up to 3 times. Pummel is your Interrupt. Heroic Leap is your Heroic Leap. Ravager, we showed you what that is. Revenge is a little bit different now. You swing in a wide arc, dealing damage to all enemies in front of you. And instead of dodge and parry, resetting the cooldown, like whenever you dodge or parry, you automatically refresh the cooldown on Revenge. Now it's on a 3-second timer, so you can only use it once every 3 seconds. It also generates 5 rage. Shield Block, you raise your shield, blocking 30% of the incoming damage, also buffing the damage of your Shield Slam. Shield Slam is your main damage doing ability. You want to use it whenever it's up. It generates 15 rage. Shield Wall reduces the damage you take by 40% for 8 seconds. Shockwave, we talked about that. Spell Reflect, raise your shield, reflecting spells cast on you and reducing magical damage you take by 30%. Last for 5 seconds or until a spell is reflected. Taunt is your main taunting ability. That's how you're just going to grab somebody and guaranteed to grab aggro. So you're going to use that to whenever you need to get somebody to attack you immediately. Thunderclap is something you're going to use when you charge or you intercept into a group of enemies, or you're just trying to grab up, adds that are loose. You're going to be using Thunderclap. That's why it's so important to use Crackling Thunder when you're, main tanking, or in dungeons or whatever. That's going to give you the most utility, the most bang for your buck. Victory Rush, we talked about that. Then one of your passive abilities, so Devastate and Revenge cause the target to bleed over 15 seconds. That's your deep wounds. In the last expansion, Devastate and Thunderclap, were the abilities that gave you deep wounds, but now Thunderclap does not have that, and Revenge has instead taken that. And then Mastery, you just increase your chance to block and critically block, and it also increases your attack power, so that's pretty cool right there. So what we're going to look at now is the single target damage ability I was talking about, and the reason you're going to choose the abilities the way they are is Ultimatum increases a critical strike from Shield Slam makes your focused rage cost no rage. And then Ignore Pain reduces the rage cost of your next focus rage by 50% and vice versa. So then what you're going to come down to here is you're getting that 60% damage buff on Shield Slam when Shield Block is up. So the way you're going to want to make that look is you're going to need some rage to get focus rage and Shield Block off. So we're just going to go in. We're going to build some rage. Okay, now whenever shield block is up, we're good to go. You're going to spam that devastate, trying to get shield block to refresh. So what you're going to do is hit focus rage, shield block. You're going to hit battle cry and then shield slam. Now what you're going to do is hit focus rage and then shield block, shield slam again, and you're going to get 2 fully powered shield slams out while the battle cry is active. So, say you're in a situation where you're not going to be taking a lot of damage, you'd rather be putting out damage than trying to mitigate it. You're going to be using Focus Rage as, what you're going to be using to, spend all of your rage. You're just going to try and get those big shield slam hits. You're going to be keeping shield block and Focus Raged up all the time. You're going to be spamming that devastate, trying to get as many shield slams as you can in. If you're not going to be the one on the boss most of the time, you want to do more damage output for the benefit of your raid, you're going to be using your Focus Raged and Shield Block. And again, it's going to look like Heavy Repercussions, Vengeance, and Ultimatum. So, that's really your damage ability. What you're going to want to do to survive, your survivability when you're main tanking, when you're in a dungeon, Mythic Plus, or what have you, that's when you're not going to be using Focus Raged at all. What you're going to be using is Shield Block and Ignore Pain. That's what you're going to be spending all your rage on. Shield Block, you're going to want to use it on those, that physical damage coming in, and Ignore Pain, you're going to be wanting to use it on, magical damage, bleed effects, or, if Shield Block is not currently available, it's on cooldown, you're going to use Ignore Pain to buffer that damage. So, that's what you're going to be wanting, using your rage on in a, when you're, tanking to spec for survivability. So you're going to keep your shield block up. You're going to be using shield slam on cooldown. You're going to be using revenge on cooldown. You're going to be using devastate as a filler when those 2 abilities are not up, and you're going to be hoping that devastate resets the cooldown on shield slam. So long and short of it, that's pretty much it, folks. Again, Never Surrender and Indomitable are 2 pretty powerful abilities. You need to make the decision what you use. I personally use Ravager myself, Into the Fray, Never Surrender, Crackling Thunder, Renewed Fury, and Inspiring Presence Shockwave. So tell me what you guys think of the video. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe.